So here we are back in the shop. So I want to talk today a little bit about the Stanley bench plane type study that Roger K. Smith did. So first thing you want to understand is this is a type study strictly for the number 4 size hand planes. And you can use the type study to get an idea on the other sizes, but you've got to kind of remember that they don't all match completely. And the other thing that you want to be aware of is you don't want to take the type study too literally. And what I mean by that is there's an awful lot of anomalies. And there's an awful lot of transition periods where some of the parts overflowed into other parts. Stanley was just using up parts to get rid of them, and not necessarily just to get rid of them, but because they work just fine with the next phase. They didn't have any idea what a type study was, and this wasn't something that came out much later. So we're going to call this the Stanley bench plane type study cheat sheet. And the reason for that is the normal type study has been done so many times, and there is a copy of it on my website. And you'll probably want to use that to get a good definition of what your hand plane is. But if you're out and about and you just want a quick reference of here's what my Stanley plane is or what type it is, or you want a starting place, there's always a couple unique attributes with each type. So that's what we're going to look at. What are the one or two attributes that will always tell you what type your hand plane is, or at least give you a very good starting point? It's kind of better than the flow chart, I guess, because the flow chart tended to not work really well a lot of the times. So this is actual attributes which will help you get an idea of what type your hand plane is. So the idea behind this is to simplify it, to cut through the noise of what type is my Stanley bench plane. I'm not a Stanley collector. I'm by no means a Stanley expert. And Stanley hasn't really ever been my primary focus on hand planes. But I've had quite a few Stanley hand planes come through my shop. And I've gone through the flow charts and all of the other ways to figure out what my Stanley hand plane type is. And I think this cheat sheet, which I've posted on my website, will help you. And what I'm going to do right now is run down the recap before I go into the long version. So the recap will go something like this. So how do I get an indication of what my Stanley plane is? So it's actually goes something like this. If it's blue with a cheesy lateral, it's a type 20 or later. If it's got Stanley written vertically on the lateral adjuster, it's probably a type 19. If it's got diagonal knurling on the cutter adjustment knob, it's probably a type 18. But you need to verify that it doesn't have Stanley written vertically on the lateral adjuster. Type 17, everybody kind of gets that a little bit easier because it's going to possibly have a rubber-looking knob, rubber-looking adjustment knob. It's probably going to have black knob and totes. It might have steel tote bolts and knob bolts. It's kind of a mixture. We know that it's got a heavier casting, but again, that rubber looking or plastic looking adjuster gives it away pretty quickly, and so do the black knob and totes. Type 16 gets a little bit tougher to determine. Type 16, 17, and 18 had the same base and a raised, broad, flat rib cast in the toe and the heel. And if you go into the extended version, I show you what that is. So it's also got the new OG style frog. So basically, if it has those things and it's not a Type 17 and it doesn't have that funky looking brass adjuster knob, it's a Type 16. 15 has Made in USA behind the frog, Bailey cast behind the knob, and it's got no raised broad flat rib at the toe or the heel. Type 14 has one patent date behind the frog. If it's got one patent date, USA cast in it, and a raised ring for the knob, it's a Type 14. Type 13, again, one patent date, but it doesn't have that raised ring for the knob. Type 12, 3 patent dates behind the frog, large adjuster, and high knob. Basically, the Type 11 is going to have 3 patent dates and a small adjuster and a low knob. Difference between those two is pretty clear. High and low knob, large or small adjuster ring. Now there's others that you can look into, but those couple of things are what gives it away. So Type 10, 2 patent dates behind the frog, and we're at this again. So a Type 9, 2 patent dates behind the frog. The difference, 9 doesn't have a frog adjustment screw, 10 does. Type 8, low front knob, it's not beaded, and a B cast in the bed. Again, look for that B cast in the bed. That should give it away. Type 7, same as the Type 8, except it's going to have an S cast in the bed. If it's got an S cast in the bed, it's probably a Type 7. Again, if you want to look at the other stuff, feel free, but if it's got an S, it's probably a Type 7. Type 6, 3 patent dates on the lateral adjuster, low front knob, and it's not beaded. So if it's looks like a Type 7 or a Type 8, but it doesn't have that S or the B, it's a Type 6. Type 5 is another fairly easy one. It's the brand new lateral with that L shape at the end. That's all you pretty much need. There's going to be a number cast in the toe, which is also brand new, but that lateral pretty much gives it away. So now we're into pre-laterals. Again, pretty easy, at least as a starting point. Type 4 has that hollowed brass adjuster that's very common throughout, except it has the Bailey patent written inside of it. So again, there's other attributes there, but if you've got a pre-lateral and it's got the recessed adjuster, it's probably a Type 4. Type 3 has that funky 2-piece frog, very collectible, very easy to distinguish. You can pick it out of anywhere. You want to pick it up because it is a very collectible plane. Type 2, solid brass adjuster, Bailey patent on it, and a rectangular type spring on the lever cap. Again, I show you that later on, but here's the recap. All right. Type 1, again, a solid brass adjuster, but it has no name on it, and it's got a banjo type spring. Now, there you go. How easy was that? No flow charts. You just need to kind of run down through the 20 of these and take a look at what you have. And then if you want to dig deeper, you can. If you don't want to dig deeper, you don't have to. I definitely hope it helps. I know that this has helped me in the past, so I'm hoping that you find it easier than most of the other flow charts that have been floating around forever. And the other thing I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to start backwards. The reason I'm going to start backwards is you're much more likely to find a Type 20 Stanley hand plane than you are a Type 1. And you're much more likely to find a Type 19 than you are a Type 2. So we'll just start backwards, but we're going to go through them all before we're done. So the Type 20. The Type 20 is kind of easy, I guess. It's blue instead of black like the rest of them, and it has the folded, I'm going to call it cheesy lateral that you see on the, you also see this lateral on the Handyman and some of the later Defiances. So between the blue and the lateral, if it's within your vintage Stanley type study, it's a Type 20. So Type 19. So the only thing that's the one attribute that's different on a Type 19 is Stanley is stamped vertically on the lateral adjuster. Now obviously frogs can be changed, lateral adjusters can be changed, but for the quick cheat sheet, if Stanley is stamped vertically on your lateral adjuster, Type 19 is a good place to start. Okay, Type 18. Type 18 is the one attribute that's unique is the knurling on the adjuster. And this is one of the ones that you want to look at because the knurling on the adjuster could transcend into the 19 type. But that is the one attribute that points directly to the Type 18, and that's where you want to start. So Type 17. Type 17 is a little more complicated. There's actually just two attributes that you want to look at, but they can vary a bit. So the first one is the knob and tote. The knob and tote is probably going to be painted. It's going to be painted black instead of a nice rosewood finished knob and tote. And the other is the adjuster, the blade adjuster. It's not going to be brass. It's either going to be a plastic looking two-tone plastic adjuster, or it might be steel. Now, this isn't set in stone because a Type 17 might have a frog adjustment screw. It might not. It might have a brass adjuster with the black knob and tote. It might have, who knows? They were just using up parts because of the war. Everything was scarce. They just wanted to get some hand planes out the door. Now the Type 16 is the only one that really didn't have a distinct feature all of its own. So you're going to want to look probably a little bit deeper once you get into it. But it is the first one to have that raised rib on the front and the back of the hand planes. And it's the first one that had the kidney-shaped hole in the cap, in the lever cap. So you'll want to kind of dig a little deeper in that. It also had the Ogie style frog, which was also new. And again, these features, most of them, they kind of followed, some of them followed through, So you'll have to maybe dig a little bit deeper for the Type 16. So Type 15 hadn't come out with that raised rib on the front and the back yet, and it had USA, made in USA stamped behind the frog. On larger ones you want to look elsewhere, but it had made in USA cast in the bed somewheres. Type 14 had one patent date behind the frog, made in USA, cast in the toe, and raised ring for the knob. So Type 13 had one patent date, but it did not have the raised ring for the knob. Type 12 had 3 patent dates behind the frog, a high knob, usually, and a large 1.25" brass blade adjuster knob. Type 11 had a low knob, 3 patent dates behind the frog, and the small adjuster. Type 10 had 2 patent dates behind the frog and a frog adjustment screw. Type 9 had 2 patent dates behind the frog and no frog adjustment screw. Type 8 only had 1 patent on the lateral adjuster, but it had a B cast in the base. Type 7 had 3 patent dates on the lateral adjuster and a S cast in the base. Type 6 had 3 patent dates stamped on the lateral adjuster and no letter in the base. But don't confuse that with any forgery stamps that you might find under the tote. There is basically no S or no B cast in the base. Type 5 is the first lateral. It's the L-shaped lateral, and it's now got the size of the plane cast in the base. Type 4 is a prelateral, so it has no lateral, and it has a recessed brass blade adjuster knob with the patent dates inside of it. Type 3 has a 2-piece funky style frog that I'll show you a picture of. It's a short-lived frog configuration, and they are somewhat rare. The Type 2 has a solid brass adjuster, and it has Bailey and patent numbers stamped on it. It also has a rectangular type spring on the lever cap. And Type 1 also has a solid brass adjuster, but it has no name on it. It has a banjo type spring on the lever cap, and some of them have a screw inside of in the center of the brass adjuster knob. And that's as easy as I can make it. I hope it helps. I hope you find typing your next Stanley hand plane a little bit easier. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.